Margaret Smith writes, and pardon if this sounds morose, but we retirees think that way. I don't think this is morose at all, Margaret Smith, for the record. If you pass away, this can go to your kids as monthly income coming in, already safely invested for them, rather than a kid getting a lump sum of money in one big lump and not knowing what to do with that wisely.
I love everything about that comment
100%,
right there.
Yeah.
You know, many people say, oh, geez, I don't want to own a property. I don't want to keep some of those affairs open. You know, I just want to liquidate and sell and just give my kids, you know, or not give my kids, whatever it may be. And then that makes sense to me for some people. But I think, again, we got to look at it from the other side. What could you be giving to your future generation, right? You could be giving an asset that from an income perspective is rock solid.
Yeah.
Right. We talk about it maybe in years 21 through 30, there's $130,000 of net rental income for the example we just had. That's happening for your future generations. There's the tax savings component. So your tax savings, if you pass and you give this to your heirs, there's a step up in basis, which means your tax saving is way better than what I just put right there. And instead of basically them having to pay taxes on the gains that you've earned, your basis just steps right up. So your future tax liability for them is a lot smaller. Your tax savings is much higher. And maybe we'll do a future show on that because it's not something we've talked a lot about.
Funny you say that, because Margaret did also say she would surely tune in if we ever did an estate planning segment here.
Wow, there you go. Well, that's a big part of estate planning. Yeah. And I think she's tapping on something that I can really relate to as well. It's the type of income source that you're giving to your future generation, right? We all know when you give a huge lump of sum of money, listen, as human beings, when we get a large sum of money, we're usually not the best stewards. If we just get a huge sum of money, we don't know what to do. We might make stupid decisions. We might not make the best return on investment decisions. It's harder. It's harder. Yeah. The asset that you could be giving to your folks, to your future generations, could be a pool of performing rental properties that are setting them up for retirement success. And it's happening slowly and growing and growing and growing over time. So that happens to be my viewpoint on why I love rental properties. And I'll just add one more thing too. I think about my kids, and I love thinking about ways that I can help them learn more about being an entrepreneur or being a business owner. And that doesn't mean that they need to be business owners. It's just, how can we use these tools to help them be the best versions of themselves? And I think of a rental property as a beautiful, like, mini business to help my kids learn about how things actually work in the financial world. And so if you think about what you'd be doing for your future generations, you're kind of giving them this beautiful little mini business. And that can be wrapped in with some education, this financial education that I think we're really lacking in this country. So for all of those things, Margaret, I just love your comment. Thank you so much. I just completely agree with you.
Yeah. And, again, not to get morose, right, GC, but I talked to you recently about my dad, right? Like, I talk about my dad on this show, I guess.
We do.
So he's my hero, right? And he recently had a medical problem, which made me think of, hey, what happens when he goes, right? So I had this meeting with him and my mom to talk about, hey, what happens? And he kind of went over everything, and he's got a certain amount of investments, and then he's got this house in North Carolina, and he's got his house in Miami. And I remember thinking in the moment where I'm like, all right, cool. I'm making sure that I know where everything goes if anything happens, and my mom's taken care of and all these different things. And my dad is a super prepared guy. He's got everything figured out. And then he's like, but if we both go, this is what happens. And I was sitting there thinking, I was like, that was the first time that I ever was like, oh, okay, what would my recommendation be with my sister, right? It's me, my sister, and my brother's kids would split kind of the assets three ways. And I was just like, man, when that date comes, that house in North Carolina that right now, he lives in half the year, I think we would hold on to that as a family and rent that thing out, right? Like keep that as a Verbo or an Airbnb. His house in Miami may be a little bit different, right? Maybe that's something that you sell, but these properties that are able to produce cash flow that are a little mini business, I started thinking that, man, intergenerationally, that would be something that would bond our whole family of taking care of this thing, enjoying it in whichever way. I very much echo with what Margaret said. I do think that this is a superior form of legacy to leave to the next generation, as thinking from the next generation standpoint.
Yeah, you're adding a whole nother element to it, which is a tool to help continue to bond future generations together.
Yeah.
I think it's special, man. That's a beautiful thing.
That's cool, man. All right.